Prithvi Shanti Antarikshagam Shanti Dau Shanti Disha Shanti Ravantara Disha Shantir Agni Shantir Vayu Shanti Raditya Shantis Chandrama Shanti Nakshatrani Shantirapa Shantiroshadaya Shantir Vanaspataya Shantir Gau Shanti Raja Shantirashva Shanti Purusha Shantir Brahma Shantireva Shanti Shantir Me Astu Shantihi. May there be peace on earth and in the sky. May there be peace in the water and in all directions. May there be peace in the plants, in the trees, and in animals. May there be peace in the hearts of all beings. May there be peace in everyone and everything. Sarvetra sukhina santu, sarve santu niramayaha, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschit dukha bhag bhavet, sarvastartu durgani, sarvo bhadrani pashyatu, sarva sadbuddhi mapnotu, Sarva Sarvatra Nandatu. May all be happy and healthy. May all see what is good, and may no one experience misery. May all overcome their obstacles and acquire good tendencies. May people everywhere find joy and fulfillment.
Good morning, everyone. Today I am reading from a book, The Miracle of Mindfulness by Thich Nhat Hanh. 3 Wondrous Answers. Here the author retold a story of Tolstoy's The Story of the Emperor's 3 Questions. Tolstoy did not know the emperor's name. One day it occurred to a certain emperor that if he only knew the answers to 3 questions, he would never stray in any matter. What is the best time to do each thing? Who are the most important people to work with? What is the most important thing to do at all times? The emperor issued a decree throughout his kingdom announcing that whoever could answer the questions would receive a great reward. Many who read the decree made their way to the palace at once, each person with a different answer. In reply to the first question, one person advised that the emperor make up a thorough time schedule consecrating every hour, day, month, and year for certain tasks, and then follow the schedule to the letter. Only then he could hope to do every task at the right time. Another person replied that it was impossible to plan in advance and that the emperor should put all vain amusements aside and remain attentive to everything in order to know what to do at what time. Someone else insisted that by himself the emperor could never hope to have all the foresight and competence necessary to decide when to do each and every task, and what he really needed was to set up a council of the wise and then act according to their advice. Someone else said that certain matters require immediate decision and could not wait for consultation. But if he wanted to know in advance what was going to happen, he should consult magicians and soothsayers. The responses to the second question also lacked accord. One person said that the emperor needed to place all his trust in administrators, another urged reliance on priests and monks, while others recommended physicians, still others put their faith in warriors. The third question drew a similar variety of answers. Someone said science was the most important pursuit, others insisted on religion, yet others claimed the most important thing was military skill. The emperor was not pleased with any of the answers and no reward was given. After several nights of reflection, the emperor resolved to visit a hermit who lived up on the mountain and was said to be an enlightened man. The emperor wished to find the hermit to ask him the 3 questions. Though he knew the hermit never left the mountains and was known to receive only the poor, refusing to have anything to do with the persons of wealth or power. So the emperor disguised himself as a simple peasant and ordered his attendants to wait for him at the foot of the mountain while he climbed the slope alone to seek the hermit. Reaching the holy man's dwelling place, the emperor found the hermit digging a garden in front of his hut. When the hermit saw the stranger, he nodded his head in greeting and continued to dig. The labor was obviously hard on him. He was an old man, and each time he thrust his spade into the ground to turn the earth, he heaved heavily. The emperor approached him and said, "I have come here to ask your help with 3 questions. When is the best time to do each thing? Who are the most important people to work with? What is the most important thing to do at all times?" The hermit listened attentively, but only patted the emperor on the shoulder and continued digging. The emperor said, "You must be tired. Here, let me give you a hand with that." The hermit thanked him, handed the emperor the spade, and then sat down on the ground to rest. After he had dug 2 rows, the emperor stopped and turned to the hermit and repeated his 3 questions. The hermit still did not answer, but instead stood up and pointed to the spade and said, "Why don't you rest now? I can take over." But the emperor continued to dig. 1 hour passed, then 2. Finally, the sun began to set behind the mountain. The emperor put down the spade and said to the hermit, "I came here to ask if you could answer my 3 questions, but if you can't give me any answer, please let me know so that I can get on my way home." The hermit lifted his head and asked the emperor, "Do you hear someone running over there?" The emperor turned his head. They both saw a man with a long white beard emerge from the woods. He ran wildly, pressing his hands against a bloody wound in his stomach. The man ran toward the emperor and before falling unconscious to the ground, where he lay groaning. Opening the man's clothing, the emperor and the hermit saw that the man had received a deep gash. The emperor cleaned the wound thoroughly and then used his own shirt to bandage it, but the blood completely soaked it within minutes. He rinsed the shirt out and bandaged the wound a second time and continued to do so until the flow of blood had stopped. At last, the wounded man regained his consciousness and asked for a drink of water. The emperor ran down to the stream and brought back a jug of fresh water. Meanwhile, the sun had disappeared and the night air had begun to turn cold. The hermit gave the emperor a hand in carrying the man into the hut, where they laid him down on the hermit's bed. The man closed his eyes and lay quietly. The emperor was worn out from a long day of climbing the mountain and digging the garden. Leaning against the doorway, he fell asleep. When he rose, the sun had already risen over the mountain. For a moment, he forgot where he was and what he had come here for. He looked over to the bed and saw the wounded man also looking around him in confusion. When he saw the emperor, he stared at him intently and then said in a faint voice, "Please forgive me." "But what have you done so that I should forgive you?" the emperor asked. "You do not know me, your majesty, but I know you. I was your sworn enemy, and I had vowed to take vengeance on you. For during the last war, you killed my brother and seized my property. When I learned that you were coming alone to the mountain to meet the hermit, I resolved to surprise you on your way back and kill you. But after waiting a long time, there was still no sign of you, and so I left my ambush in order to seek you out. But instead of finding you, I came across your attendants who recognized me, giving me this wound. Luckily, I escaped and ran here. If I hadn't met you, I would surely be dead by now. I had intended to kill you, but instead you saved my life. I am ashamed and grateful beyond words. If I live, I vow to be your servant for the rest of my life, and I will bid my children, grandchildren to do the same. Please grant me your forgiveness." The emperor was overjoyed to see that he was so easily reconciled with a former enemy. He not only forgave the man, but promised to return all man's property and to send his own physician and servants to wait on the man until he was completely healed. After ordering his attendants to take the man home, the emperor returned to see the hermit. Before returning to the palace, the emperor wanted to repeat his 3 questions one last time. He found the hermit sowing seeds in the earth they had dug the day before. The hermit stood up and looked at the emperor. But your questions have already been answered. How is that? The emperor asked, puzzled. Yesterday, if you had not taken pity on my age and given me a hand with digging these beds, you would have been attacked by the man on your way home. Then you should have deeply regretted not staying with me. Therefore, the most important time was the time you were digging in the beds. The most important person was myself, and the most important pursuit was to help me. Later, when the wounded man ran up here, the most important time was the time you spent dressing his wound. For if you had not cared for him, he would have died, and you would have lost the chance to be reconciled with him. Likewise, he was the most important person, and the most important pursuit was taking care of his wound. Remember that there is only one important time, and that is now. The present moment is the only time over which we have dominion. The most important person is always the person you are with, who is right before you. For who knows if you will have dealings with any other person in the future. The most important pursuit is making the person standing in your side happy, for that alone is the pursuit of life. Tolstoy's story is like a story out of scripture. It does not fall short of any sacred book. We talk about social service, service to the people, service to humanity, service for others who are far away, helping to bring peace to the world. But often we forget that it is the very people around us that we must live for first of all. If you cannot serve your wife or husband or your child or parent, how are you going to serve society? If you cannot make your own child happy, how do you expect to be able to make anyone else happy? If all our friends in peace movement or of service communities of any kind do not love and help one another, whom can we love and help? Are we working for the other humans, or are we just working for the name of an organization? Service. The service of peace, the service of any person in need. The word service is so immense. Let's return first to a more modest scale. Our families, our classmates, our friends, our own community, must live for them. For if we cannot live for them, whom else do we think we are living for? Tolstoy is a saint, what we Buddhists call a bodhisattva. But was the emperor himself able to see the meaning and direction of life? How can we live in present moment, live right now with the people around us, help to lessen their suffering and making their lives happier? How? The answer is this. We must practice mindfulness. The principle that Tolstoy gives appears easy, but if we want to put it into practice, we must use the method of mindfulness in order to seek and find the way.
Good morning. Today I'll be reading from Richard Schiffman's Sri Ramakrishna, the Prophet for the New Age. The section I will be reading covers Ramakrishna's initial days as a priest at Dakshineshwar, leading to his first vision of the Divine Mother. I chose this section for two reasons. The first is that I think it exemplifies that the devotee's relationship with the divine is a personal one, and each of us can have our own relationship with the divine. And the second is that Sri Ramakrishna's path of pure and earnest love spoke to me as particularly poignant and a good way to interact with the Divine Mother. When Ramakrishna took over as temple priest at Dakshineshwar, this final realization was still many years in the future. From the start, he approached Kali not as a convenient symbol of the omnipresent divine, so less as being identical with his own inner self, but with the simple faith that she was mother. Why does the God-lover find such ecstatic delight in addressing the deity as mother? Ramakrishna once asked rhetorically, because the child is more free with the mother than with anybody else, and for that reason, she is the dearest of all. The striking intimacy and playfulness characterized Ramakrishna's relationship to the divine throughout his life. This attitude might appear to us charmingly naive, but is it really so? Or is the naivete our own in thinking the Creator immeasurably distant, often some high heaven, or existing only as a kind of metaphysical abstraction, eternal, infinite, forever aloof, and unreachable by the products of his own creation? What has always set the great mystics apart from the merely religious is not the belief in God, or even the emotional intensity of that belief, but the belief in God as a personal fact. Christ and St. Francis, Chaitanya and Ramakrishna were alike in treating the divine as the nearest and dearest of the soul. They walked with God and talked with him and her. They pleaded, argued, wept, and cajoled. To others, the intimacy often seemed blasphemous. The respectable and religious men of the world were greatly scandalized by it. Possibly it struck them as a dangerously democratic idea that any man off the streets might go above their heads and converse directly with the King of Kings. Out of fear, they beheaded, they threw to the lions, they crucified, and when they didn't crucify, they suppressed. And when they felt secure enough in their ignorance not to suppress, they laughed derisively. But it made no difference to our heroes. Only one thing mattered to them, to remain in the good graces of their friend. All else was vanity. Ramakrishna, never one for moderation where devotion to God was involved, stepped over the invisible boundaries of propriety time and time and again. More than a few eyebrows arched at his unconventional worship of Kali. Those who came to the temple to take part in the daily service would watch incredulously as the young priest, having completed the formalities of worship, staggered over to the idol like a drunkard, his chest and eyes flushed crimson from emotion, and caressed Kali endearingly on the chin, sang to her, held a morsel of food up to the cold stone lips, and pleaded with her to eat, and then caught hold of her stiff black arms to dance in ecstasy. There seemed to be no end to the eccentricities of this mad devotee. His worship became progressively less predictable, more bizarre. At times, Ramakrishna would sit like a catatonic, insensible, lost in tears or plaintive moans. Again, he would drift off into reverie in the midst of some ritual act and remain for hours on end, mechanically waving a camphor lamp before the idol, or going through the motions of an offering long after the flame had gone cold and the pile of flowers and leaves to be offered had dwindled to nothing. Gradually, Ramakrishna's obsession became so intense that every last vestige of normal routine in sleep, food, and personal hygiene was torn from its moorings and carried away in the frenzied whirlwind of his devotion. It was as if the world and all the things men cherished simply vanished. Day and night, he could think of nothing but God. Sri Ramakrishna himself described his extraordinary state at that time as follows. As I was perfectly unmindful of the cleaning of the body at that time, the hairs grew long and got matted at themselves, being smeared with dirt and dust. When I would sit in meditation, the body would become stiff and motionless like a stork. Through intense concentration of mind, and birds, taking it to be an inert substance, came and freely perched on the head and pecked into the matted hair in search of food. Sometimes I used to weep so intensely, the pangs of separation from God, that in great bitterness I rubbed my face in the earth. Often I used to get cut and bleed. In meditation, prayer, and other devotional practices, the day used to fly by so quickly that I was not conscious of it. At dusk, when the approach of night was announced by the ringing of bells and the blowing of the conch from the temple, I used to be reminded that the day had passed and the evening had set in. With this consciousness, a frenzy of despair would seize my soul, and I would throw myself on the ground and rub my face on it, crying out loudly, "Mother, another day has passed, and still you have not appeared before me." Always it was the same refrain. "Mother, come to me, show yourself. I've abandoned everything, money, friends, family, sensual pleasure, and still you keep aloof." The same anguished cry, one day to the next. The Holy Scriptures, the testimony of the sages and saints, and the ancient legends were all agreed that if you shunned everything for the sake of God, the Divine Mother, then she was bound to take you gently into her infinite arms, even appear in flesh and blood concreteness if need be, to brand you with the deathless signet of her love. But so far she had failed to do so. She had come maddeningly close, to be sure. Ramakrishna had felt her warm breath passing through the hollows of his being, and he had trembled in resonance with her soulful voice within. Time and again, her veiled smile had touched with rapture every cell of his body. If he had not yet seen her face, her shadow had already fallen upon him countless times. And yet, in his moments of anguish, it seemed to have availed him nothing. For all the unmistakable signs of her presence, the perfume on the wind, the gentle tinkling of anklets, things he had actually perceived with his physical senses, she had remained always just out of reach. Finally, Ramakrishna had to admit that nothing he had said or sung or whispered or wept had melted the mother's heart of stone. It was a realization that caused him the most acute agony of spirit. At tortured intervals, the priest of Kali was driven to think the unthinkable. Are you for real, mother? Or is it all a pleasant fiction, mere poetry without substance? If you exist, then why can't I see you now? Is all religion just a fantasy, a castle in the air? Are you merely a figment of man's imagination? Ramakrishna, who cherished truth above a merely comfortable faith, could not fail to ask even these questions. The moments of doubt, however, were necessarily fleeting. He had seen far too much at that point to entertain them seriously. The young man, who had already gazed more than once upon the unearthly radiance beyond the horizon of the known, was like a hound on the chase. With the scent strong in his nostrils, there was no longer any question of holding back. Ramakrishna would offer an amusing analogy for the state of mind to his great disciple, Vivekananda. "My child, suppose there is a bag of gold in one room and a robber in the next. Do you think that the thief can sleep? Not at all. His mind will always be mulling over how to enter the room and get hold of the gold. Do you think that a man who is firmly persuaded that there is a reality beyond all these sensations, that there is a God, that there is one who never dies, one who is the infinite sum of all bliss, a bliss compared to which the pleasures of the senses are mere trinkets? Can he rest contented without struggling to attain it? Can he cease his efforts for one single moment? Not a chance. He will become crazed with longing. To a nature as passionate as Ramakrishna's, the pain of separation was unacceptable and unbearable. His emotions, which had been festering for so long without relief, were a powder keg waiting for the match. For the dramatic scene, when they flashed swiftly to a climax, we turn again to the master's own description. One day, I was torn by intolerable anguish. My heart seemed wrung as a damp cloth might be wrung. I was racked with pain. A terrible frenzy seized me at the thought that I might never be blessed with the divine vision. I thought if that were so, then enough of this life. A sword was hanging in the sanctuary of Kali. My eyes seized upon it, and the thought raced through my brain like a flash of lightning. The sword, it will help me put an end to it. I rushed up to it and seized it like a madman. And lo, the whole scene, doors, windows, the temple itself simply vanished. It seemed as if nothing existed anymore. Instead, I saw an ocean of the spirit, boundless, dazzling. In whatever direction I turned, great luminous waves were rising. They bore down upon me with a loud roar, as if to swallow me up. In an instant they were upon me. They broke over me. They engulfed me. I was suffocated. I lost all normal consciousness and fell to the ground. How I passed that day and the next, I know not. Round me rolled an ocean of unspeakable joy, such as I had never experienced before, and inside me was an immediate knowledge of the light that is the mother. It was a major breakthrough, a miraculous solar burst at midnight of the dark night of the soul, but it is characteristic of Ramakrishna that he could not rest content with this unearthly radiance, which was destined to fade with time. He had not yet reached the end of his journey. He had been granted a vision of the destination, but where a lesser soul would have basked comfortably in the mellow afterglow of that wondrous light, Ramakrishna's restless spirit could derive no satisfaction from what came from a charmed interlude and then vanished. The madman of God could not stop short of the utter union with the beloved that he so desperately desired.
May the divine being, who is the Father in heaven of the Christians, Holy One of the Jewish faith, Allah of the Muslims, Buddha of the Buddhists, Tao of the Taoists, Ahura Mazda of the Zoroastrians, the Great Spirit of the Native Americans, and Brahman of the Hindus, lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May we be granted strength, freedom, and clear understanding. May we learn to see God in our own hearts and in everyone around us. May God bless us all and fill our hearts with gratitude, grace, and love. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all.